Another week in a Wonderful Day in the Lord broadcast. We're glad you joined us. We are working toward the end of the book of Job. We've been on Job for quite some time. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have. If you haven't enjoyed it, you're probably not even listening to this broadcast anymore. So I trust you're hanging on. Job's a fascinating book. There's nothing quite like it in all the scriptures. And we're so glad God chose to give us a book like this. We're now toward the end, and Job is... he's realizing now that he has overstepped his bounds. He has turned to God, and he's in chapter 40. And basically, he says, "I'm done talking, Lord. It's up to you what you want to say." And the Lord he's saying in verse 4, for example, he is insignificant. God is the magnificent one, but the Lord's not quite letting him off the hook yet. He wants him to see just how awesome he is. God's not showing off here. He's not needing somebody to pump him up or something. But until we understand the absolute awesomeness, the magnificence of God, we never really see our place in God's economy. Job sees his insignificance. Not that God doesn't have a purpose and a role for Job, as he has for all of us, but he sees his proper place now, and that's a good place to be. But apparently the Lord doesn't think he's quite there yet. And so God's final dialogue with Job deals with some of the magnificent creatures that he has created. He's already talked about a whole lot of those prior to chapter 40, but now he moves to two of the most magnificent of all creations in the animal kingdom. And the first one is in chapter 40, verses 6 to 8, and on down, but we're going to look actually verse 15. But I want to look at verses 6 to 8 first, because the Lord asked Job out of the storm and said, "Now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you instruct me. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me, that you may be justified?" So God is still pointing out to Job that he's gone way over the top here, and he needs to be brought into line. So then he moves into talking about these two incredible creatures that he has made. One is the Behemoth, and we see the Behemoth in verse 15, and this is an interesting creature. Now, we've got to remember, we don't know exactly when all this takes place. Some believe this whole scene might have taken place before the flood. Others after the flood, before the time of Abraham. Some believe during the time of the patriarchs, Abraham and so forth. We don't really know. But the creatures he's describing here are not like anything that we can actually pinpoint on the earth today. Some, for example, have thought the Behemoth is the hippopotamus because of some of the characteristics we see here. But as we look closer, that doesn't seem to fit at all. This is a creature beyond the hippopotamus, and very likely, some believe, this is going back to the dinosaur age. And these are creatures that were still on the earth during that time. Even if this is after the flood, all the creatures were taken on the ark 2 by 2, and therefore that would include the dinosaurs, who probably died out some generations after the flood. But if that's the case, and if Job is the scene of Job is in that time period, some of these creatures were still around. So that could be what we're looking at here. And some believe if that's the case, this could be a Brontosaurus or that type of dinosaur. So look at it with me very quickly. It says in verse 15, he eats grass like an ox. His strength is in his loins. Verse 17, he bends his tail like a cedar. So that's why I don't think it could possibly be a hippopotamus. They're powerful creatures, but their tails are not like cedars, where a brontosaurus would fit that description quite well. In verse 19, he's the first of the ways of God. This is just the most magnificent creature on the earth. Again, brontosaurus, maybe a hippopotamus, very unlikely. In verse 23, if a river rages, he's not alarmed. He is confident, though the Jordan rushes to his mouth. Can anyone capture him when he is on watch? With barbs, can anyone pierce his nose? The point is this is a magnificent creature that is virtually uncapturable. You can't capture him. You can't defeat him. He's the greatest in some sense of all that God has created. But here's the point. The point is that this creature is just a creature. As great and as powerful and as magnificent as it is, God is its creator. And so if God has created a being such as this, just think how magnificent and awesome and powerful God the Creator is. That's the point he's driving home to Job. And that's the point we'll be looking at as we move on to the next creature in the next chapter. I hope you can join us tomorrow.